Hello, good evening, everyone. Hello, we're going to go ahead and get started right now. We have pretty much the majority of people in. If you don't have a seat, please, there's a couple empty seats up front. I encourage everyone to kind of make their way, make a new friend, people. And we're going to go ahead and get started here in the next minute as the final people shuffle in and find their seat. You guys in the seat? Okay, well, thank you all very much for attending tonight. I'm really excited to see such a full room. Look forward to an exciting meeting tonight. We really want to share what we've been doing and also take this opportunity to receive input from the entire room. And I'll introduce Susan, who's going to walk you through the exercise we have planned tonight and how we think we can pull the most information from the group. So quick introduction, my name is Tom Perez. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works with the city. I'm the project manager for the Laguna Canyon Road project. And tonight I have Susan here with me. She's with Circle Point. She's leading the outreach effort for the project. At the back of the room, Pat, he's with Mark Thomas, leading the design for the project. And Tony Rahimian in the back is assisting the city with project management for the project. So again, we're here tonight to discuss the Laguna Canyon Road Protect and Connect project, which is looking at improvements roughly from Canyon Acres Drive up to El Toro Road. And I'm going at this point to turn over to Susan and let her run with it.
First order of business is making sure we can move the screen. So Tom, this isn't working. And I'm also hoping I don't, oh goodness. There's quite an echo. Other side? All right. Is it moving now? There we go. All right. Not with the echo. So it's not live streaming. So it's in this room that we are on. So we need to. Sorry about that, folks. Are we good now? Less echo? Okay, perfect. Well, good evening. It's so great to see so many people here tonight. We knew and we know that this community is passionate about Laguna Canyon Road. As Tom mentioned, my name is Susan Harden. I've been working with the city of Laguna Beach actually for many years on a variety of different projects. And one of them happens to be Laguna Canyon Road. Back in the 2014 days, I've helped facilitate some of those task force meetings. And we'll get into that in just a second as well. But our agenda for tonight is to share a little bit of background and overview of the project, of the Protect and Connect effort, and then also to walk through some preliminary concepts and ideas. And these are just preliminary starting points for the development of alternatives, which is actually the next phase of the process. So we're going to walk through that information, and then we're going to, we've seen a bunch of these posters that we have up at the front. We're going to bring those to each of the tables and give you markers and give you a chance to work together and talk about what you like and don't like, what your comments are, what your suggestions are for additional considerations, to really just mark up those big posters as a group. And then you'll each be asked to share back your input and your ideas, and this is all being recorded, and we'll be able to take this into the meeting notes as well. So that's our plan for this evening. I might have to have you stand there and help me with that. So the project background, a little background on the project. If you want to move to the next one. So as you all know, Laguna Canyon Road is a really interesting place, right? Both from the standpoint of the purpose that it serves as a evacuation route in nature, excuse me, if there are emergencies, it's in one of the evacuation routes. It's also a rich recreational resource as well as a natural resource. This project area is focused from El Toro to Canyon Acres. So there's a lot more to Laguna Canyon Road, but that's the focus of this particular study. It's heavily used by pedestrians, by drivers, by cyclists, as well as transit riders. And of course, as I mentioned, the importance that it has naturally and ecologically. And of course, it also is a gateway to your city and your community. So if you've checked out the website or you looked at the fact sheet, you can see sort of this timeline that we're looking at from this project. This is not new. I mentioned the 2014-15 task force, and it even has been going on, the conversation about Laguna Canyon Road well before that. I would love to see who, as we've been reaching out to the community for the last month or so, I've been meeting a lot of folks that were part of the task force, and I'd be interested to see a show of hands of those who maybe were part of that task force back in the day. All right, so you could be up here giving this presentation. You know all of the road and the nuances just as much as I or the project team. So we're starting in that 2014-15 space. We're now here at the spring 2020-24. So 10 years have passed and we're making headway. Ideally, we'd be looking at 2026 to really start that finish that preliminary engineering. That was working. So the 2014-15 task force. This task force was comprised of city officials, of residents, Caltrans. As we know, Caltrans is currently the owner of this roadway, and other stakeholders. So there were some community organizations, some of the environmental organizations that were part of that collaborative effort. That group met many times. I'm not even sure how many times, but many times to talk about alternatives and discuss different options. And out of that report came several different alternatives that were discussed and some preferences on those alternatives as well. And that was prepared in 2015. During that process, a lot of the conversation was about the limitations imposed on the options based on the ownership of Caltrans. So there were a lot of things that the community and the task force hoped to do, but Caltrans design limitations sometimes stood in the way to some degree. So after that 2014-15 timeframe, what is known as the Caltrans kind of a project study report, sometimes referred to as a PSR, began. So that was 2 years later, in June of 2017. That study yielded even more alternatives, fine-tuned some of the alternatives, did a little bit of not detailed engineering, but some preliminary looking at what is possible. And that yielded a whole set of other alternatives you can see on the screen here. This is just a couple of those, but that document and the task force report are all on the website, the project website. So if you want to dig into those, I think someone, maybe bless, it might have been you the other night, said that this PSR is somewhat around 600 pages or something. So there's a lot of analysis, a lot of data in there. There was also a cost-benefit analysis that was prepared in 2021 as a companion to the PSR that kind of looked at what are the costs benefits of those different alternatives. And that was prepared or approved by Caltrans in 2022. So that brings us to now, to this project in May of 2023 was when it first kicked off. And we've titled it Protect and Connect. And that is because of the importance of the corridor, protecting it as a natural resource, as a recreational resource, as a community resource, as well as protecting people who are driving and using and riding along the corridor. But it's also served as a major connection. So that's where that name came from, something to help people remember it and see it. So when you see this logo, you'll know it's about this effort over the next couple of years. We also, as part of this effort, kicked off in May of 2023, some of the right-of-way studies, some of the preliminary analysis began, but a lot of the conversation was also about relinquishment from Caltrans. So there was a lot of discussion about the pros, the cons, should we not consider that relinquishment, taking the road back from Caltrans and putting it into city ownership. Now that hasn't happened, but what did happen was the council made a decision to move forward with the process of discussing that relinquishment. So really talking about it, have more formal negotiations with Caltrans on that relinquishment. So that's happening right now. And what that does is open the door to develop some alternatives that are more closely aligned with that task force report from 2014 and 15. And that's what we wanted to share with you a little bit tonight, was some of those different options that have emerged out of those planning documents, and work tonight to provide some input as well as ideas on changes for those. So I mentioned a little bit about the goals, but you can see some of the goals for the Protect and Connect effort. One of those is safety. So removing the utility poles, undergrounding those overhead lines. So removing those as safety impediments, both for drivers, travelers on the roadway, as well as wildfire risks. Providing multimodal improvements. So really looking at ways to encourage users of all sorts, cyclists, transit riders, pedestrians, as well as automobiles, people to use that corridor safely. And developing some solutions to better accommodate flow of traffic. So not adding capacity to the roadway, but finding ways to potentially improve the flow of traffic. And of course, underlying all of it is protecting habitat and open space, and also protecting the viability of the existing businesses by not impacting private property. Community engagement is a huge portion of the project as well. We need to hear from the community. We need to end up with alternatives that are supported by the community to move forward, to really get this underground or get this underway. Some of the tools that we're using are here on the screen. So we've had a website up for a while. There is an online survey. I'd like a show of hands of who's completed that online survey so far. All right, well, there's quite a few that don't have their hands raised. We have the QR code out on the table, as well as some QR code sheets. So we welcome you to take that survey. The survey is really about kind of traveler behavior. How are you using the corridor? What for? How frequently? Those sorts of things, so that we have a good sense of the users. And I'll give a quick summary of where we are with that survey in just a minute or two as well. And we've also been, we have this workshop this evening, but we've been out in the community for the last, I guess, 6 weeks now, talking with people one-on-one and promoting the participation in that survey. So the survey, as of this morning, had 2,500 respondents. So hopefully we get another 60 or so from you all this evening. We haven't put an end date on the survey. It's been up since mid-March. So we probably want to go at least maybe another week or so. So spread the word. We want to make sure we get as much response to the survey as possible. So some of the questions, and these are just preliminary results because we're still getting more surveys each day. So these are results from last week, the percentages there. So the respondents to the survey generally are using the corridor a lot to commute from home. So you can see 67% there, people driving that corridor to and from home, but also a lot on recreational activity. So those who live here are also using the corridor for recreational purposes, 84% there in the bottom corner. We are getting some responses from students. So the LCAD students, potentially Annalise parents as well. So we've distributed the survey to some others as well. Some other questions that were asked is, what is your primary route or a primary mode of transportation along the corridor? And you can see there in the top left, 98% of the respondents primarily drive. But underneath that, the secondary mode of transportation has 12% bikers and 16% walkers, 25% other. So other modes of transportation. I'm not exact. We'll have to dig into the free responses and find out what all those others are. It could be that people are classifying maybe an e-bike separately than a cycle or something of that sort, but we'll dig into that. But it's good to see that even though we've got a lot of drivers, we've got other perspectives that are being shared as well. And then how often? So you can see at the top there, the respondents to the survey are using the corridor a lot. So 24% multiple times a day, once per day, 8%, 3 to 6 times per week, 33%. So people that are responding to the survey are really using it a lot. And some of the key challenges, you can see one of the top ones being congestion, but also getting around on foot, getting around by bike, lack of transit, and a high number there, 35% on making left turns. So those are some of the preliminary responses we've been getting from the survey. When the survey closes, all of the data will be put on the website so everyone can peruse that as well. We've also been out and are continuing to meet with stakeholders. So you can see some of the groups that we've met with over the last 6 weeks or so. So some of the environmental agencies, OC Parks and others. Visit Laguna board, we went to the board and talked to the board. We also met with some environmental groups, bicycle groups, have a couple more that Tom is doing this week, Coastal Greenbelt and Laguna Canyon Foundation. And we're certainly welcome an invitation to come to your organization if you haven't had anyone come to speak to you about the project. So please let us know if you're interested in that. We've also been trying to reach people just where they are. So where they are out in the community. So those are the pop-up events that have been held at the dog park, the trailhead, transit station downtown. We had us last week or 2 weeks ago now at Suzie Q here to try to get people who are here using the facility, farmers market. And then just a couple days ago, we were at the main beach. So trying to get people to not only fill out the survey, but look at the information that we're going to put on your tables in just a minute as well and get feedback there. And then, of course, we also did some door-to-door business outreach. So we spent about 3 days, not the whole day, but portions of 3 different days, actually 4 different days, to drop into the businesses along the corridor, to talk to the business owners, the managers, and employees as well, just to get them to understand that this project is out here and invite them to participate, as well as just get some of their questions answered, share some of the preliminary concepts to get feedback as well. So all in all, we are still summarizing all this information. As you can see, it's just been, we're still in the middle of it, but we've talked to individually about 400 or more people about the effort. So with that, I want to just walk through the preliminary concepts. I know some people came up to the table a little bit earlier and got a sneak preview. Actually, I'll ask another question. Did anyone see us at a pop-up, any of those pop-up events? Yeah, so a few people. Any businesses here that we may have dropped into your business door to door? Great, nice to see you. So a little bit of that helped as well. I think we're also keeping all of those folks on an email list so that everyone stays informed of all of the movement of the project as we go forward. And we are in just this preliminary phase 1 of the outreach. Phase 2 will be looking at, we'll be developing and sharing more formal alternatives out of the options that we're sharing this evening. And then phase 3 will come back with a preferred alternative and get information. So we still have a few more iterations to go. So we'll start with the undergrounding. So on the left side of your screen, you can see the existing condition. One of the primary components of this effort is to remove those utility poles and underground those utilities, which makes a big difference visually. You can see the proposed condition there. If those are removed, it makes a big impact. We're also looking at a couple different bike and pedestrian improvements, concepts that, again, emerged out of that task force report, as well as were looked at in some degree through the PSR as well. So this first one, and again, for discussion purposes only, and this is what we want you to explore this evening at your tables and as in a group. But this first concept has on the western side of the street, a two-way shared bike and pedestrian path. So that path on the left or on the west side, pedestrians are allowed, and it's considered a bike path, but pedestrians can walk in that as well. That would be a separated, so a physical separation from the roadway. And then on the east side of the street, a sidewalk or some sort of pedestrian pathway on that side as well. The other option that's being explored is looking at a bike lane, so a striped bike lane on either side, on both sides of the roadway, so on both the west and the east side of the street. So those are the 2 options that have kind of gotten more traction than the others out of those task force reports. That separation with the 2-way bike and pedestrian path has a few different options in terms of how to separate that. So it could have a raised island between it. Let's see if this actually, oh, it is working. So you could have a raised island between the roadway and that pathway. Could also have a rolled curb, so a little bit of a separation that way. And it could also introduce a wood railing of sorts as well. So could add, and those can be combined. So you could have the wood railing with either of those 2 options. So those are being looked at as potential ideas for that separation. So we want to get your input on that tonight as well. And then we know that keeping the corridor, the design, rural and natural is an important component. So some of the preliminary features being discussed are textured or colored concrete sidewalks, or as we've been hearing, I think more from our visits with folks, a preference for decomposed granite in terms of pathways. And I should back up real quick to just these 2 options again from the conversations that we've been having at the pop-ups, even at the businesses, at some of the stakeholder meetings. There's somewhat of a preference leaning towards this option. So we'll be interested to hear tonight your thoughts on that and if that tends to be a preference here as well. And similar here, a lot of people liking the decomposed granite, some differing opinions on the wood railing, so whether that would work or not. And we also learned at our stakeholder meeting with the environmental organizations about another document that, a study that was done that has some other good design features that we're going to be pulling in as well. And then looking at the rolled curb. So a traditional curb is sort of that vertical up and down curb, the rolled curb. Sometimes it's viewed as having a little bit more of a rural feel to it versus that stark urban kind of edge. Another factor along the corridor is that there are bus stops and there are transit trolley stops along the way. So those need to be accommodated as well, and providing access to those from one side of the street to the other. So you can see this on the left here, all those different places where those bus stops are. So making sure that there is way, not at every one of them having a crosswalk, but making sure there's ways to cross the street at various points. And creating ADA compliant bus stops with some additional amenities or features along the corridor as well. So looking at those, evaluating where along the corridor might make sense for an additional signalized crosswalk to be able to accommodate that and accommodate also the concerns about making left turns. So that was one thing that we definitely saw in the survey and we're experiencing with the businesses as well, talking about how hard it is for people to make left turns in or into their business or out of their business. And another final piece, just to discuss, we're looking at our other kinds of traffic calming, so ways to calm traffic and control traffic on those times when I've heard from many people that when it's not busy, it's a speedway. So how can we encourage people to be driving slower when it is not busy? So looking at things like these narrowed lanes and markings, which you have in the city already here at Temple. There's an example in Temple Hills. Curb extensions where the curb might bump out at an intersection, which shortens, to this example here of a bump out, the curb bumps out, shortens the crossing distance if you're going to cross over. So those are things, it's also a visual obstruction for a driver. They see those and they tend to slow down. So those are things that are being explored and looked at. Including potentially a raised median, probably most likely near Annalise, where they've changed the turn in and out motions there as well already. So that might make sense as a place for a median. It's also where you're entering this portion of the corridor. People have been driving really fast down 133. They get to El Toro, it kind of makes sense. You're changing the way you're entering into Laguna Canyon Road. So that is what we're looking at, what we're exploring. Maybe we could take a couple questions and then we wanted to give you a chance to take those maps, take those graphics and really discuss at your tables what you like, what you don't like. And we'll walk through that a little bit as well. So, and I'm going to have you, if you can say your question, and I'll try to read it out or paraphrase for the microphone.
So the first thing I'd like to say is the survey, my perspective, is a joke. It's a very general question, when you're using it, when you're not using it. So I don't know what the purpose of it was, because throughout those numbers there, I don't think it gives enough information for anyone to draw conclusions from that. The second thing is, and you're talking about breaking out into groups here, you know, we had an experience with the second or third workshop of the promenade. We just had papers on our desk, you know, on the tables and all that. That is also not, from my perspective, relevant. I want to hear from you, and I want you to hear from people in here, whatever their positions are, not have us talk amongst ourselves in a manner, I'm not finished, in a manner that basically saying, take the crayons, it's like a kindergarten class. So we want to ask you questions. That's what.
So that's fine. And just let me answer one of your questions. So, okay.
If I may, you know, the fact that there is talk about the city, Laguna Beach, acquiring that road necessitates you and all of everybody on staff understanding that there are 23,000 citizens in Laguna Beach. That is going to cost a bloody fortune. And I think before you go another step, you've already done many steps. Before you do another step, you should be estimating in general terms how much that's going to cost. Is it going to be 10 million, 20 million, 40 million? We don't know. And Tom, we don't know what the promenade is going to cost. Nobody knows. You don't know. The city doesn't know. and you're proceeding. This is another example. I'm complaining to you now, I'm a little upset, because, you know, we all come out here. What did you have, a dozen people that attended your workshops and business and all? That's nothing. That's what, 5% of the people here?
So it's definitely more than that, but I hear I hear you. And one of the reasons we wanted to do the breakout tables and session discussions is so that you are able to, because it would be impossible to hear from every single person in the room tonight in the way that we're hearing from you right now, because we only have 1 hour, right? We've got a lot of people, and a lot of people want to learn. Well, I mean, we have an hour from now. So let me just, right, so if you,
So we'll go ahead and answer some questions that you just brought up. So the first question about relinquishment, that's an item. So the city council has given direction to begin the process of negotiating with Caltrans for the relinquishment. So what that means is we've issued a letter to Caltrans letting them know the city would like to proceed with this negotiation. So the first step with doing. Okay, sir, I'm trying to answer a question. So we,
Every year on litigation.
okay, so we've gone ahead, we've provided the letter to Caltrans, we've let them know that we'd like to begin this negotiation and take a look at the relinquishment. And so the first item that Caltrans does is they put together a relinquishment report. They'll determine whether from their end, whether they would proceed with the relinquishment. So we expect to get something from them in the summer to see that. In the meantime, the city's working on putting together our own internal estimate, but we feel at things such as what repairs are needed, what maintenance is needed. Putting together, it is a negotiation. It's something we will work through. Just to give you a timeline in discussions with Caltrans, this relinquishment process is a 3 to 4 in this discussion. If we move forward into the conversation, we can really touch on what improvements we want to do. If we want to do nothing, that's an alternative that's studied as part of the environmental document. If we want to do some of the improvements that were listed in the PSR, which are not conducive to what we've heard in the 2015 report and task force report. So again, we're moving down this path. We're doing these meetings to hear from the community to understand if a project's done, what would we like to see? So it's not going to be productive tonight to say you don't like the do this type of outreach. And I think if we give it a chance tonight, we can have a positive outcome. We also are looking for an opportunity to have an open discussion at the end, which, you know, we're going to start running short on that time. So I really would like to proceed into that exercise. I'll go ahead and take one more question here. Yeah, so we have a couple different alternatives that each are going to have a different width. Can you tell me what the range?
It's all about our.
One of the main constraints for the project, I apologize. One of the main constraints for the project is that we stay within the existing right of way. And so each alternative we're looking, you can add, you can subtract, but we're trying to stay in that existing right of way envelope to minimize impacts to the adjacent businesses, properties, open space. Some of that, we will need to, for construction purposes, get in there, make some revisions, do some stuff. I need to keep it on for the recording. I apologize. So with that, the cost, we on the, I believe it's on the fact sheet. If not, it's on the project website. We put sheet. So what we've acknowledged at this point is these numbers, we're talking in the range of 150 million. There's no way we're gonna fund this without outside funding. So we're also working very hard on putting together funding strategies. We've gone and applied for grant funds from FEMA to pay for the utility undergrounding. We're pushing on Edison to take funds from their TUG program to pay. So we are working hard, and the funding's a major component that we will need to address. So this is not a project we would be looking to pull from the general fund. We're gonna,
Well, if you remember what happened, a lot of us went in and should change things. And then we left going, there are a lot of reasons why we can't do what we thought we were going to do. And if this meeting is supposed to take information back to the city, there is so much that we're not talking about. If we make Laguna Canyon Road 4 lanes, what's gonna happen to the coast highway? The coast highway is gonna be absolutely inoperable because people are gonna decide, oh, it's not congested, so they're gonna come from Laguna Niguel and they're gonna go through the city. That's how it is.
There's no adding lanes. There's no adding lanes. And the reason, one of the things I just want to clarify that this is not a design exercise. We're not asking you just to mark things up with colors. There's questions on here and there's preferences, and we want to hear your ideas and thoughts. And there's also a how well you like, don't like something. So it's not, we are getting good feedback, and we do want to save time so that your table can share back what you talked about.
You know, the idea is not going to hurt, if you're gonna pick up on a piece of paper. You're missing an opportunity to hear from the people who raise their hands and have an opportunity.
And I'll propose this. So for those that would like to stay and work on a table exercise, we would invite you to do that. We will also have a few of our project team members in the hallway if you'd like to just ask questions and hear from them. And then we'll bring everyone back together for
the city council cannot be here tonight. This is not a publicly noticed meeting, so that would be a Brown Act violation.
So we have. Here goes. So we have about 20 minutes. So I wanted to, and I know there's still some really good dialogue happening, but I know we also want to respect people's time. We're certainly willing to stay and continue to have conversations. So what I was hoping we can do is I'm going to pop around to some of the tables and see if we can do some sharing. But one of the things I wanted to just highlight to start with, just some of the high level, as I've been walking around from table to table, some of the things that we need as a team, as a city team, and we need maybe some more conversations around to get the right, get information out to people, and also some of the concerns that people have. So I wanted to highlight some of what I was hearing, and then I want to bop around to some tables, and if you could share some of what your conversations were. So there's definitely a lot of concerns about cost, not knowing the budget, having a better budget, so getting some information on that. There's also, both from the open space and right of way, people need more information, want more information about those impacts and what, understanding the dimension. So the space and really being able to understand that. So we need to get that information out there. There's some people questioning why are we doing this at all? So we still need to maybe be a little bit better on explaining the need and the purpose and having more of a diversity of those ideas of why. Or a bit more conversations. And then people saying that's maybe not addressing congestion in the way that you would like it to address. So I'm gonna see if there's, I know there was a couple groups that had a pretty complete boards here, or if anyone would like to volunteer some highlights from your table's conversation. Yo. Highlights from the table's conversation? Oh my goodness. This microphone.
Oh, it's the city's fault?
How's that?
Most important, undergrounding for fire prevention. Where it goes, how it goes, how much it costs. It's the concept of undergrounding versus not undergrounding. We like undergrounding. Provide turnouts for buses, not in the roadway, so the cars have to, so you could have a bus turnout instead of having it in the traffic lane. How many buses are really needed? There's not much residential up in the canyon, like there is on Coast Highway, which has a bus stop about every block. Plant about 200 trees, frontage roads for high traffic areas, such as food pantry, marine mammal, industrial buildings. Because all those properties try to make a right turn or a left turn out of their property, and that congestion is all the way up the canyon. We like the wood barrier between the bike lanes and the traffic for the aesthetic of it and the visual separation. We'd like a half signal at the food pantry and the marine mammal center because of the high traffic concentration that's occurring there. What else? We use a railing in some places and no railings in others. Bike seat pavement, not PG. Separation for bikers. We like the landscape on the left one of the big sheet. We don't like the right one. It's too much paving and it looks like a freeway. That's it.
Thank you. Where would they put trees where they'll fit? All right. How about this group? Would you guys like to, do you have a spokesperson? Hi, Mina.
Area spokesperson, right? No.
Just some highlights? You don't
Do
necessarily.
my best. I'll just talk really loud. I think we like the separated bike lane as well for some of the same reasons, but maybe a little more emphasis on safety when you get the separation. Also heard comments that paving as opposed to DG was supported, so ongoing maintenance and perhaps better aesthetics, but lower maintenance costs. Yeah, sort of maybe a question, but and I don't want to deviate too much from this, but LCAT has a red light for their pedestrian crossing. And I've heard residents speak before at city council meetings about wanting a red light on PCH for the pedestrian crossings where they flash yellow and drivers get confused. I'm just confused about why Caltrans allows it on Laguna Canyon Road and they don't allow it on Coast Highway. Thank you. And it kind of goes to maybe my other point. I think everybody probably in the room is going to agree that undergrounding is important. It's important for aesthetics and it's important for safety and for evacuation of the city. We're going to get into how much does it cost and is it worth it, but I think there's probably going to be some agreement there. How hard have we asked Caltrans to do that without taking over the ongoing operating? I get you drop the mic when you get an applause. So what, guys, what have I missed here since I'm talking?
Driverless car part. All the designs should handle that.
Yeah, maybe a very detailed item, but obviously all of the designs should handle driverless cars since that's where the direction is going. And then I saw a lot of data in the reports on traffic car usage, but I didn't see a lot of data on pedestrian and bike usage. So I saw 1%, up on the screen. What are we solving for? How much is it going to cost? What's the cost benefit of that? But then there's also probably a latent demand. I don't ride my bike out there because I kind of want to live a couple more years. So there is that latent demand, but where are you going from and to as pedestrians? We get it with cars, but where are you going to as pedestrians and bikes? Anything else?
Well done.
Okay, thanks.
Nice. Good job.
Well done.
Any highlights that you guys would like to share from your discussion? Nothing here? Any highlights from this discussion at this table? Any highlights you want to share?
I think we agree. The first comments we
So you
agree
had
with.
some agreement with the first?
Yes.
We were focused on keeping the bike lanes separate from the traffic more than it looks like it is here, and pedestrians as well. I would not be walking along the Canyon Road ever with my kids or dog or myself, anyone. So more trees possibly to separate more, or like fat metal beams hidden by dense foliage, or and then possibility of creating a bike lane that is completely separate from the road, possibly like a hiking trail going into, I just don't want to, possibly like a hiking trail that kind of goes into nature where you can put the bikes way off from traffic.
Just a thought.
Yes.
I understand you cannot take over the Laguna Canyon, called the, no, Laguna Coast Wellness Park, all right? However, when they put up a trail, right, paralleling the road, that would be part of the park. And then you can walk on it.
So there are discussions with the OC Park right now, and there is a trail. There is a trail that there may be an opportunity. No, not all the way, but there might be an opportunity to connect with that trail and potentially. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say, why is this an accepted fact? I don't think our city is prepared to manage a whole new transportation corridor. And we are not prepared to take on the cost of that. What about the 10 years of construction that is estimated? It's great for us all to dream of what we want there, and I want all the things you're talking about, but I don't want our city, I don't want to pay for it, especially when our tax dollars already pay for it with Caltrans. I don't think we have the money, and I definitely don't think our city has the ability to manage it. And I think we should be talking about whether we should even do this rather than what's your dream. I think we should go take all of these desires and take them to Caltrans and really advocate for that, and not for our city to take it over. And shame on our city for taking this on.
Highlights from this table.
Yeah, maybe, or I can just talk loud, because I do. So a couple of the things that I wanted to say. First of all, there is a large residential population in the county. It's residential the whole way out. Not only is there residential on the frontage, but there's multiple residential communities. So about 20% of the city's population lives there, and people also go to businesses, et cetera, along the canyon. So the idea that there's not much need for public transportation in the canyon, or that people wouldn't walk there, both of those are nonsense. People in the canyon would absolutely walk the canyon every single night when we head out our door and think about walking our dogs. We turn towards town rather than up the canyon because of the danger. If you give us a place to walk, we'll walk. And 20% of the town lives there. So the idea that we don't have to think much about pedestrian, that's simply not supported by facts. I would also say that the Laguna Canyon annexation area specific plan specifies that that area does not have to have sidewalks, because sidewalks, especially paved sidewalks, are antithetical to the look and feel of the canyon. And the vast majority of people out there hate the idea that you would put in a sidewalk and are much more supportive of a pathway. I would also suggest that directing people into our already overused and fragile wilderness parks is not a good idea. Those parks are habitat for species that are already struggling. The idea that somehow we would take the burden off us and put it on wild creatures or wild places is not a good plan. We have space and cash to create pathways for humans to walk on. Finally, maybe not finally, because there might be some other comments, but Caltrans doesn't underground. Caltrans has been very clear that the only time they're allowed by law to underground is if it's somehow mandatory as part of some part of the roadway they're designing, and that there are no other cheaper roadway alternatives. The undergrounding would be done by Edison. The city has talked to Edison repeatedly about this, and Edison just recently identified they have a new funding source that is specifically for cities that are high fire risk, where the undergrounding could reduce fire risk. And they have suggested that Laguna Beach could be one of the cities. Now, obviously, there's a lot of call and not enough funding, but the idea that Caltrans would pay for it, no, they won't, not under any circumstances. And it's not, the city has again and again and again and again in multiple different ways gone to the state, tried to get legislation passed, gone to Caltrans, gone to Edison. It's not a Caltrans responsibility. It's not happening. I would also say that the city and Caltrans and Edison have made clear Caltrans will not allow us to underground under the roadway. Edison does not want to underground in the wildlands, because they think it will be environmentally challenging. They'll be forever getting permission. The mitigation will be horrendous. And the challenge of putting lines up and down over hills and then getting massive trucks in there to address the faults, right, if something goes wrong. So Edison says we're in support if we get underground under the roadway. If the city takes over the road, and yes, there are for sure questions about cost and liability, but the city's aware of that and working on addressing them. So I think we should ask those questions, but not in a sort of, why the hell aren't you even thinking about this? Of course they're thinking about it and working on it. The only way that we are going to get protecting, or at least the most likely way for us to protect open space and underground that protects the people and the open space, is for the city to have the road. Now, ultimately, the city may not decide to do that. Ultimately, the people may not decide to do that, but there's a clear-cut reason that supports our values to do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go Penny. All right, our table could not come to a decision because we didn't know if we would be encroaching on open space. Where? Okay, because number one, we need the map to understand if these bike lanes would be going into open space. So to be able to decide on one of these ideas, we need to know the ramifications. So the first ramifications is, are we going into open space? Obviously, it's the cost. And I think that if you would have got to the last slide and then gave us a range from a low end to a high end, what can you get? So knowing, are we encroaching in open space is mission critical, knowing how much it's gonna cost, a low end, high end, and what we're gonna get. Those are the things that we need to know, out of the gate in order to make any decisions on whether it's A, B, or C.
Thank you. Thank you. Couple comments over here. Or at least kind of get close to it.
Okay.
Don't get too close.
Our table had some of the Laguna Canyon Foundation and some developers and long-term residents. So our focus is more big picture. And so instead of looking at, should we have a bike lane here or a curb like that? We're very concerned with not only the initial costs, but ongoing costs. There's a lot of accidents on highways. And what about the insurance? Caltrans is self-insured. So what about the city? What does that do? How's the city going to handle all the costs related to the maintenance? Caltrans has specialty procurement. So one of the questions we had too is, if the current road is 55 feet wide and this new proposal 66 feet, that gives us 11 feet. I just buried a bunch of electrical lines along historical cottages that I couldn't fit. All it takes is a little Caterpillar skid steer. You bury 18-inch trench, and then we have the transformers to work with retaining walls. But I mean, why can't we work out a solution to where we can make it safer, but let Caltrans keep the property, and maybe there's just a few spots that we have to go into open space. The other comments were, the question about the bike lane is, if you create all these bike lanes, what's going to happen when the bikes get to PCH? Because is it then safe because there's no bike lanes on Pacific Coast Highway? So if we have a bunch of bicyclers coming in, how does that work for safety? So I think our table is saying, wait a minute, there's bigger questions. And a lot of us do want to retire in this beautiful community. And we have fixed incomes, and we're worried about initial costs, ongoing costs. So if you hear people being angry, it's because we cannot afford more assessments, more bonds and assessments to our property. And so, did I cover it for our table? Anything else for Laguna Canyon? They're very concerned about the open space. We get it, but if we've got 11 feet to work with, I think we could bury the lines on the side and replant it and make it beautiful.
Thank you. So we're right at 7:30. I wanted to see if there's anybody that I missed in terms of a table. I think you guys, I didn't get you in the middle there. Oops, sorry. That document is on the project website. So at the bottom of the page, you'll see the task force report, that PSR, that project study report, and then there is that cost benefit analysis too. It's from 2022, correct? 21, perhaps. That one is less than that, yes. Yes.
Hey, what happens to the parking along Laguna Canyon?
So what happens to the parking, those are the details that start to get worked out once we have a more firm direction. But yes, that is, every attempt to preserve all of that parking. So the goal is, as I mentioned, not to infringe on property and the way the activity is on the corridor already. So I'll let you have the final word here.
I was just wondering if there's a graphic that shows the right of way.
There will be a graphic that shows the right of way. It's not fully ready at this point yet. I'm looking to my engineering team here. But that is part of the design process. Part of the engineering is to have that more detailed look at the right of way. Yes. So if you want to go to the next slide, or 2 slides, maybe next one there. So one of the things that we'll stay and answer questions and continue to have some dialogue for sure. But in terms of what happens from here, we take all of this great input. As I mentioned, this is the beginning conversation. I know it from some of the graphics, it may look like it's already moved way in advance. These were intended to make sure that they were legible and understandable in some fashion, not because they're a done deal. So we will now move into developing a few alternatives. And all of the input that you provided will go into developing those alternatives, along with the input that we've received from those conversations we've had along the corridor as well. So we are digging through, summarizing all those notes. We haven't had a chance to really analyze them. So that happens next. So from May to June, we'll be developing those alternatives that then come back to you later in the summer to have more conversations around, okay, we heard you. Here are some alternatives to look at, and they'll have more information, some cost ranges, impacts to the right of way and dimensions. So more information for you to respond to and to provide input. So those are the next steps. We really thank you so much for your passion and for your participation this evening. There are note cards that have been at the tables. If you have additional comments you want to write on those, please do. There's also an email, Tom's email, I think, on the project website. Happy to collect additional input. And I've had a couple requests for additional meetings for us to come out and to talk to you as well. And so we're happy to do that as well.